That evening, the sky stretched endlessly above the quiet countryside, painted with streaks of orange and purple as the sun slowly disappeared behind the hills. The old two-lane highway was almost empty except for the occasional pickup truck rumbling past. On the side of that lonely road stood an 11-year-old girl holding the hand of her 7-year-old brother. Their clothes were dusty, their faces streaked with tears, and both kept glancing nervously over their shoulders. Emma tried to sound brave even though her heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. Noah squeezed her hand until it hurt. "Emma," he whispered, "is Mom coming?" She wanted to tell him yes. She wanted to promise everything would be all right. But she had learned something over the past year: promises were easy to make and impossible to guarantee. "We'll find her," she said softly. Only hours earlier, their lives had changed forever. Sarah had spent nearly 2 years trying to escape a man named Victor. What had begun as charming smiles and kind words had slowly turned into manipulation, anger, and violence. Every apology had been followed by another broken promise. Every promise had been followed by another bruise hidden beneath long sleeves. The day Sarah finally escaped, she took only what she could fit inside one suitcase. She grabbed Emma, carried little Noah into the car, and drove away without looking back. She changed towns. She changed jobs. She changed phone numbers. She even dyed her hair. For months she believed they were finally safe. The children started smiling again. Emma made new friends. Noah learned to ride a bicycle. Sarah found work as a waitress in a small diner outside a peaceful farming community. For the first time in years, hope returned. Then one ordinary afternoon, everything shattered. Sarah had walked into the grocery store after finishing work. She was choosing apples when she happened to glance through the front window. Parked across the street was a black pickup truck. Victor leaned against it with his arms crossed. Watching. Waiting. The basket slipped from Sarah's hands. Apples rolled across the floor. She grabbed her children and rushed outside through the back entrance without saying a word. "Mom," Emma asked while trying to keep up. "Get in the car." Sarah's voice trembled. They drove without a destination, taking one back road after another. She checked the rearview mirror every few seconds. At first she saw nothing. Then, almost 30 minutes later, headlights appeared behind them. The truck. She pressed harder on the accelerator. The old sedan shook violently. "Please," she whispered to the car. "Not now." Smoke rose from beneath the hood. The engine coughed once, twice, then died completely. The car rolled to a stop beside a wide pasture surrounded by wooden fencing. Sarah tried starting it again. Nothing. She looked behind them. The truck was getting closer. There was no time. She opened the doors. "Run." The three of them climbed over the fence and raced through waist-high grass toward the only building in sight. An old ranch sat on a gentle hill. Its weathered barn leaned slightly with age. Horses grazed peacefully nearby. Chickens wandered around the yard. Everything seemed calm, untouched by the fear racing toward it. An elderly rancher was repairing a broken fence post. His movements were slow but steady. He noticed the family running before they reached him. Sarah stumbled, nearly collapsing from exhaustion. "Please," she gasped. Before she could explain, Emma looked back and saw the black truck turning through the ranch entrance. She knew exactly what it meant. Without thinking, she ran straight to the old man. She grabbed both of his rough hands. Her tears spilled freely. "Please hide my mom." The rancher looked into the frightened little girl's eyes. He didn't ask who they were. He didn't demand an explanation. He didn't wonder whether helping them might bring danger. He simply nodded once. "Follow me." He led them around the side of the barn to an old storage room hidden behind stacked hay bales. Years earlier, he had built it as a storm shelter for livestock supplies. Few people knew it existed. He opened the heavy wooden door. "You'll be safe here." Sarah hesitated. "I can't involve you." "You already have," the rancher replied gently. "Now get inside." Emma and Noah climbed into the small room. Sarah looked at the old man with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," he smiled. "My name is Walter." Before Sarah could answer, Victor's truck slammed to a stop outside. Walter quietly closed the hidden door and covered it with hay. Then he walked back into the yard as though nothing unusual had happened. Victor climbed out of the truck. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and furious. "Old man," he barked. "A woman came this way." Walter continued adjusting the fence wire. "Lots of folks use this road. Don't play games." Victor stepped closer. "She has 2 kids." Walter shrugged calmly. "Haven't seen them." Victor looked around suspiciously. "I know they're here." He shoved past Walter and marched toward the barn. Inside the hidden room, Noah buried his face against his mother's shoulder. Emma wrapped an arm around him. Nobody spoke. Nobody even breathed normally. Victor searched every corner of the barn. He opened empty stalls. He kicked over buckets. He even climbed into the hayloft. His boots echoed only a few feet away from the hidden door. Sarah closed her eyes. This was the end. Outside, Walter suddenly whistled loudly. One of the horses trotted toward the open gate. Walter deliberately left it unlatched. The horse wandered into the yard. Victor cursed loudly. "Your horse is getting away." Walter pretended to panic. Oh no. The distraction pulled Victor away from the storage room. By the time the horse was safely back inside the fence, Victor had lost his patience. "If you're lying to me." Walter met his eyes without fear. "I've lived long enough not to be afraid of angry men." Victor stared for several seconds. Then he climbed into his truck. "I'll find her." The truck disappeared in a cloud of dust. Walter didn't move. He waited. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. 15. Only when he was absolutely certain Victor was gone did he uncover the hidden door. Emma rushed into his arms. "You saved my mom." Walter hugged her tightly. No child should ever have to beg for something like that. Sarah stepped outside, unable to stop crying. "I don't know how to repay you." Walter looked toward the quiet pasture. "You don't owe me anything." He invited them into his farmhouse. The house was old but spotless. Family photographs filled the walls. Most were faded. Many showed a smiling little girl growing into a young woman. Emma noticed them immediately. "Is that your daughter?" Walter nodded. "Her name was Grace." "Where is she now?" He remained silent for a moment. "She passed away many years ago." Emma lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry." Walter smiled sadly. "So am I." That evening Sarah finally told him everything. She spoke about years of abuse. About hiding bruises. About lying to friends because she was ashamed. About believing every promise that things would change. Walter listened without interrupting. When she finished, he quietly poured everyone another cup of tea. "My wife," he said softly, "used to tell me something." Sarah looked at him. "She'd say that courage isn't never being afraid. Courage is deciding someone else is worth protecting even while you're terrified." Sarah wiped away another tear. "I don't feel courageous." Walter shook his head. "You left. I was desperate. You still left." He smiled kindly. "That's courage." The following morning Walter called the county sheriff. Instead of treating Sarah like someone exaggerating her fears, the sheriff listened carefully. Deputies documented everything. They photographed old injuries, collected messages, recorded threats. Walter gave his own statement. Neighbors volunteered security cameras from nearby properties. One rancher loaned Sarah a reliable pickup truck. Another family brought groceries. Someone else offered children's clothes. Word spread quietly throughout the community. Nobody pitied Sarah. They simply stood beside her. Emma had never seen adults work together like that. Walter became more than a protector. He became a grandfather. Every morning before sunrise he invited Emma outside. "Come feed the horses." She learned each horse's name. She brushed their coats. She learned patience. She learned confidence. Noah followed Walter everywhere. He carried tiny buckets that were almost bigger than he was. Walter never laughed at him. Instead, he said, "A ranch runs because everyone helps." Noah believed him. One afternoon Emma found Walter sitting alone beneath a large oak tree holding an old photograph. She quietly sat beside him. "You miss them?" He nodded. "My wife, my daughter, my grandson, all gone." Emma leaned against his shoulder. "You still have us." Walter smiled through watery eyes. "You know what? I thought God had forgotten this old ranch." Emma looked around. The horses grazed peacefully. Birds sang in the trees. "It doesn't look forgotten." Walter chuckled. "Neither do I anymore." Weeks later Victor returned. Only this time he wasn't alone. He had hired someone to help him search nearby properties. They stopped outside Walter's ranch just after sunset. Walter noticed immediately. Instead of panicking, he picked up the phone. Within minutes sheriff's deputies arrived. Victor attempted to leave. He was stopped before reaching the highway. This time officers arrested him for violating a protection order, stalking, criminal threats, and several outstanding warrants uncovered during the investigation. Sarah watched from the porch. Her knees gave out. Emma caught her before she fell. "It's over," Emma whispered. Sarah cried harder than she ever had before. Not because she was afraid. Because for the first time in years, she wasn't. Months passed. Sarah found work at the bakery in town. She laughed again. Sometimes she caught herself humming while cooking breakfast. Emma noticed every little change. Healing wasn't loud. It happened quietly, one peaceful morning at a time. Walter's ranch slowly transformed. The broken barn received a new roof. Neighbors helped repair fences. Fresh flowers appeared beneath the porch windows. Children from nearby schools visited to learn about ranch life. Walter smiled more often than anyone remembered. One Saturday the local church organized a community picnic at the ranch. Families arrived carrying homemade food. Children raced through open fields. Music echoed across the hills. The pastor thanked Walter publicly for his courage. Walter looked embarrassed. "I didn't do anything special." Sarah stood. "Yes, you did." Everyone turned toward her. "You believed us before you knew our names." Silence filled the field. She continued. "You protected complete strangers because one little girl asked for help." Emma reached for Walter's hand. "I'll never forget that." Many people wiped away tears. That Christmas snow covered the ranch for the first time in years. Walter decorated the porch with simple white lights. Inside the farmhouse a large tree stood beside the fireplace. Emma carefully placed a handmade ornament on one of its branches. Read, "Family isn't always found. Sometimes it's given." Walter stared at the ornament for a long time. Then he quietly walked into another room. When he returned, he carried a small wooden box. "I've been saving this." Inside were old Christmas ornaments that had belonged to Grace. "I've never been able to hang them since she died." He handed them to Emma. "Would you help me?" Emma smiled through tears. Together they decorated the tree. Not one ornament stayed inside the box. That evening everyone gathered around the fireplace. Walter carved the turkey while Noah proudly announced that he had helped gather eggs all year. Sarah laughed until tears formed again. Happy tears this time. After dinner Walter disappeared outside. Emma followed him. He stood looking toward the stars. "You okay?" He nodded slowly. "I used to spend Christmas talking to memories." He looked back toward the glowing farmhouse windows where laughter spilled into the cold night. "Tonight," he smiled, "I'm talking to my future." Years passed almost unnoticed. Emma graduated from high school as valedictorian. Her speech surprised everyone. Instead of talking about grades or success, she spoke about kindness. She told the story of one frightened little girl who had begged a stranger to hide her mother. She never mentioned Walter's name until the very end. The audience stood before she even finished. Walter cried harder than anyone. Later Emma attended college and studied social work. People asked why. She always answered the same way. "Because someone changed my life when he didn't have to." Noah grew into a strong young man. He stayed at the ranch after school. Walter taught him everything he knew. How to repair fences. How to care for horses. How to judge weather by watching the clouds. Most importantly, how to judge people by their character instead of appearances. Sarah eventually opened her own bakery in town. Above the entrance hung a simple wooden sign. "Second Chance Bakery." Every Friday she delivered fresh bread to Walter before sunrise. He always pretended to complain. "You'll spoil me." She always laughed. Too late. On Walter's 90th birthday the town planned a surprise celebration. Nearly everyone came. Families who had known him for decades. Children he had taught to ride horses. Neighbors he had quietly helped through difficult times. Emma traveled home for the occasion. She stepped onto the small stage built beside the barn. Holding the microphone, she looked at Walter sitting in the front row. "When I was 11 years old," she began, "I believed the world was divided into good people and bad people." She smiled. "Then I realized something. The world changes because ordinary people choose to do extraordinary things." She looked directly at Walter. "When I begged him to hide my mother, he never asked whether helping us was convenient. He simply helped. He gave us safety. He gave us hope. And without realizing it, he gave us a future." The crowd applauded. Walter slowly stood. His hands trembled with age. "I only did what anyone should do." An elderly woman from the audience smiled. "No," she shook her head. "You did what everyone hopes someone would do." There was a difference. Late that evening, after everyone had gone home, Walter sat once more beneath the old oak tree. Emma joined him. "So," she asked, "any regrets?" Walter looked across the peaceful ranch. The horses rested quietly. The farmhouse lights glowed warmly. Laughter drifted through an open window where Sarah and Noah cleaned up after the party. Walter smiled. "Only one." "What is it?" "I wish I'd met you all sooner." Emma leaned over and hugged him. "You found us exactly when we needed you." Walter closed his eyes. Life had taken away much from him. His wife, his daughter, his grandson. For years he believed grief would be the final chapter of his story. Instead, one frightened little girl's desperate plea had opened an entirely new one. A chapter filled with healing, with family, with purpose. Long after Walter was gone, people in the county continued telling the story. Not because he was rich. Not because he was famous. But because he proved that one decision made in compassion can echo through generations. Emma often visited schools, shelters, and community centers, encouraging people to stand beside those living in fear. At the end of every speech, she shared the same sentence that had changed her life forever. When I was a child, I asked a stranger, "Please hide my mom." He didn't hesitate, and because of that, everything changed.